gonna take a look at some real live lighting setups. So we're gonna look at a real simple interview setup. Now joining me today is my wife, Rachel, and she's gonna help sit in and be the interview subject. So the way this is gonna work is I have this camera that's really wide, and that's for seeing the entire setup. So that's gonna give you the view of where the lights are going and where they're positioned. And then we have another camera over here, and that camera is going to be focused on her just like a real interview setup. It's pretty tight, and so we'll be cutting back and forth between these two cameras to give you an idea of what the setup looks like and what the end result is going to be. So in this first video, we are going to explore some ideas if we're just using one light, something that's really simple. We're not gonna worry about a hair light or lighting up the background. We're just gonna use one light, and we're gonna look at some different options. We're gonna look at an incandescent option, maybe some fluorescent, and an LED option as well, to see how they look and what we might need to do to massage them a little bit to get the look that we're after. So the first thing that we're gonna do here is I'm gonna use a 650 watt Fresnel and a diffuser, and we're gonna kind of make a big soft light on this side. So I have a whole bunch of things set up over here off camera, so we're not gonna do a whole bunch of putting lights on stands and building and clipping and running cables and all that jazz. We're just gonna get right down to it. So let me grab that light and throw it up, and as soon as we get the key light set up, I'm gonna kill this other light here. So we're just gonna be looking at the lights that we're using for the interview setup to give you an idea of exactly what's going on here. So let's check that out. All right, so right here, I have a big old diffuser. It's a 42-inch diffuser. And what I wanna do is I wanna put it over here. Now, I get that that's kind of in the way for you, but you'll just have to bear with me for just a second. And so the idea is, from Rachel's perspective, the interview camera is right here. And so I wanna kind of position this over here, basically around 35 to 45 degrees. Her head's here, but her body's facing this way. So what I like to do is have the light come from this way, and that way it looks like she's kind of positioned towards the light instead of turned away from it. So that's what we're gonna start with, and then we'll see what that looks like. So the idea here with the diffuser is we're gonna put it up pretty high, and I'm also gonna drop a sandbag here on this. I'm gonna go ahead and throw on my gloves here so I don't make myself 2 hands full of cooked sausages. So I'm gonna use the barn doors here, and I'm gonna just make sure that we're shaping the outer spill of the light here, because this light will throw a good amount of spillage off to the sides here. So we get that big hot spot, but then we get a whole bunch of stuff that we don't necessarily want. So it's right about there. And I wanna make sure that I'm kind of filling that up as much as possible. There we go. All right, so we have our 650 watt Fresnel up. It's hitting the diffuser, and it's looking pretty good now that we've killed our other light over here. So we're getting a nice light over here, and the nose shadow is actually falling right on the smile line, which is a pretty flattering look. Now, if we wanted to, we could add a reflector over here, and this would help fill in those shadows just a little bit more. And what this is doing is it's basically taking our key light and it's reflecting some of it back. So it's already gonna be at a lower amplitude, if you will, than the key light. So you can see again, we'll look in the interview cam without the reflector and then with the reflector. It's definitely a nice flattering look. It's a little less dramatic, and it doesn't cast another shadow on the other side of the face. So that's another issue you can get if you use too many lights, is too many shadows on the face, and that can make things look confusing. Now that we have this basic setup, we can tweak it just a little bit. You can see there's a lot of spill way over here, and really we only need the soft big light here to be on Rachel. We don't need it on the background. So what we can do is we can take another big reflector, and I have a big reflector right here, and we can use this like a big giant flag. This is like almost like a 4x4 floppy flag. And if we put this right next to the diffuser here, we can cut a lot of the light in the background off without cutting it off of Rachel. See, right now we're not really affecting the light on Rachel's face, but we are scooching a heck of a lot of it off of the background here. So adding that big giant flag really helps clean up the background and makes a much more dramatic look. So let's check out what the same exact setup will look like with a different lighting source. This time we're going to use the Lowell Prime 200 and see what that looks like in place of the 650 watt Fresnel. So let's check that out. All right, so now we have the whole thing switched around, and now we're using the Lowell Prime 200 as our key light here. Now it doesn't have the same punch as the 650 watt Fresnel, and it is on full tilt here. But let's jump over to the interview cam here and see what the exposure looks like. Now at f4, it's a little bit dark, but we can easily just come up to f2.8, just one stop, and that looks pretty good. And that flag over here is really helping the background to stay nice and dark. I like to have the subject pretty bright and the background pretty dark. Now, let's see what this would look like if we just kill the diffuser and we just use the Lowell 200. So I'm gonna drop this down and get it out of the way. This is gonna be a more dramatic look because this, comparatively, this is about, I don't know, a fifth of the size. So the shadows are gonna be a good bit harder. And you can see if we take away the reflector here, we're gonna have to adjust our exposure again because like we said before, when we diffuse the light, it's definitely going to cut the output. So this actually works pretty well. If we scooch this light more this way, we can shorten up that smile line significantly and make this even flatter. And then when we add the fill reflector here, we can start to get something that is hard with the reflector. It's kind of filling in things just a little bit and softening just a little bit. From this perspective, we can't do a whole lot to keep the light off of the background. We can try and position this a little bit to block it off, but that's not too bad. The background is still pretty dark and we are edging it off, just a little bit of it. So let's swap out the Lowell Prime light. And this is a Lowell Fluorescent. So the color temperature is 5500K and they say it has a CRI of 90. So we're gonna check that out here. Now I have it on a real simple socket adapter and then an umbrella stand adapter here from Manfrotto. And in this parabolic reflector, it's gonna give us a pretty nice soft light. So I'm gonna position this right about here and get some power up here. It's a softer light, but it's not super soft. Now this umbrella is actually an umbrella softbox. We could get out the diffuser panel for the front, but that would cut the output down probably by half. I think it looks okay right now. The shadow is not super hard and the exposure seems pretty good. So this one bulb here will do a really good job. Now before we looked at the Rifa and that had 3 lamps in it, 380 watt CFLs. So that would definitely have a lot more output. But let's look at one more really quick setup. This is the Lowell Rifa EX88 with a 1000 watt lamp in it. Now this has a boatload of output and it's a big light. I think it's over 30 inches square. And that's pretty good. Now, if we're using it this close with a camera that's that sensitive, that's a Canon C100, and we're at f4 and ISO 850, we could probably swap out this bulb with a lower wattage bulb, maybe a 500 watt bulb, because we are pretty hot. It's not quite overexposing on our skin here, but if we go down to, now we're at 2.8 and ND2, which is essentially 1 stop less than we were before. That looks pretty good. But we take that off and go back to f4. It is pretty hot. So again, we can try and use this big 5-in-1 over here to try and kick off some of the light in the background. And to help that, we can pull it back just a hair. All right, it maybe kicked it down a little bit just in that back corner there, but it looks like we could come forward just a hair with this super flag. I see just the edge of it's in right now. Somewhere right in there. We're cutting it down on the background. There you go. And this light is so big that it's giving us plenty of light, and it's so big that it's really filling in a lot more than using the diffuser, because even with a diffuser, you do get a hot spot and then the rest of it is a little bit less bright. So it doesn't quite fill in as nice as a big softbox like this. It's about twice as bright probably as the 650 and the diffuser, and there's almost no reflection. The only reflection that we're getting is off of here, where before we were basically bouncing a good 30% of the light back in the room. So this is a lot more controlled, and maybe with a smaller reefer box or a smaller bulb in here, this would be the ideal setup. This may be a little bit overkill for one person. It would be awesome for two people. So in the next video, we are going to add a hair light to this setup. We may switch things around here for our key light and our fill light, but we're gonna add a hair light, and we're gonna explore some ideas on how to treat that and what stands to use. Check that out coming up in the next section.